Welcome back to Master 79. This is ielts speaking, parts 2 and 3, topic 45. Describe a noisy place you have been to. In this lesson you get the planning, a full model long turn, and every one of the 6 part 3 questions answered. One thing first. When we say band 9, that is our own quality target, checked against the public ielts band descriptors. It is not a certified examiner score. And one more honest note before we start. Huong, our candidate, is invented, and the wedding she describes is a constructed example. Copy the technique, never the content. The examiner rewards your own life told well. Here's the plan. First, the card exactly as printed, including 2 odd phrasings will flag. Then 60 seconds of planning using a 4-box method, and I'll show you what the notes actually look like. Then a full long turn, broken into 5 chunks, and then read end to end. After that, all 6 part 3 questions, each with the thinking that produced the answer. And we'll finish with a language bank and the marking criteria. Let's start with part 2, the long turn. A quick reminder of the format. The examiner hands you a card with a topic and some bullet points. You get exactly 1 minute to prepare with paper and a pencil, and you should absolutely use them. Then you speak for 1 to 2 minutes. The examiner will stop you, so never stop yourself early. The 2 classic traps are running dry at 50 seconds and reading your notes aloud instead of actually speaking. Here is the card, exactly as printed. Describe a noisy place you have been to. You should say what it is, when you went there, what you did there, and explain why you feel it's a noisy place. Read that last line twice. The explain bullet is where most of your marks are hiding. So 60 seconds. Here's how to spend them. 1 box per bullet on the card. 4 boxes, nothing more. Keywords only, nouns and verbs, never full sentences. Add a 5th line, the finish, so that you know your last sentence before you start. And spend the final 10 seconds on the Y box because that's the bullet examiners weight most heavily. This is what that actually looks like on paper. Notice how little there is. What cousin's wedding, village, 2 hours from Ho Chi Minh City. When April last year, did bridesmaid helped her get ready, table to table, drag on stage. Why noisy, karaoke rig, speakers taller than me, ground vibrating, 200 guests shouting, firecrackers, kids. And a finish, ears ringing, voice gone, the noise was the point. That is the whole page. You cannot read a sentence and speak at the same time. Now, here is what those notes turn into.
I'd like to talk about my cousin's wedding reception, which was held in a small village about 2 hours outside Ho Chi Minh City. I'd honestly never experienced anything quite like it. Without exaggeration, it was the loudest place I have ever set foot in. This was back in the spring of last year, around the middle of April. The party was held in a marquee the family had put upright in front of the house, and because it was a rural wedding, essentially the whole neighborhood had been invited. Well, over 200 people. As for what I did there, I'd been roped in as one of the bridesmaids, so I spent the morning helping my cousin get ready, and then most of the afternoon going from table to table greeting relatives I'd never met before, and eventually being dragged up on stage to sing, which I'd rather not dwell on. And that's really why it sticks in my mind as a noisy place. The family had hired an enormous karaoke system, 2 speakers taller than I am, and the music was cranked up so high that I could feel the ground vibrating. On top of that, you had 200 guests, all shouting over the music to make themselves heard, and every few minutes somebody would grab the microphone and belt out a ballad, usually spectacularly out of tune. Meanwhile, there were children tearing around between the tables and somebody letting off firecrackers in the yard. I remember going home the evening with my ears genuinely ringing and my voice completely gone from shouting all day. Looking back, though, I'd say the noise was rather the point. In that part of the country, a quiet wedding would be seen as a bit of a failure.
That's the whole thing. About 300 words, which is roughly 2 minutes at a natural speaking pace. Here it is end to end, so you can see the shape of it. So why does that score well? Every bullet on the card is answered in the order the card gives them. The Y bullet gets the most airtime, roughly a third of the whole turn. The concrete detail carries the vocabulary, speakers taller than I am, the ground vibrating, ears ringing. There's one lighter side, which I'd rather not dwell on, and that signals natural speech rather than a memorized script. And the last sentence is a judgment, not a summary, which hands the examiner somewhere to take part 3. Now part 3. Part 3 is a discussion, 4 to 5 minutes, and the questions grow out of your part 2 topic. The big shift is away from your own life and towards people in general and society. Aim for 40 to 60 seconds per answer. Not one sentence, and not a speech. The classic trap here is answering the topic rather than the actual question you were asked. Here are all 6 questions, exactly as printed, and 2 of them need flagging before we start. Question 2 is a negative question. Should children not be allowed to make noise under any circumstances? Obey yes or no is genuinely ambiguous there, so you must answer in a full sentence. And question 4 is printed as which is exposed to more noise, the city or the countryside. Standard phrasing would be which is more exposed to noise. We've left it exactly as the card has it. For every one of these, use 3 moves. State it, answer the actual question in one clear sentence. Support it, give the reason or the mechanism behind your answer. Stretch it, add an example, a contrast, or an exception that shows your range. State it, support it, stretch it. Question 1. Do you think it is good for children to make noise? 3 seconds of thinking. Yes, broadly, because noise usually means play. Language, confidence, and curiosity all develop through it. And the limit is context, not volume. A hospital ward versus a playground.
On balance, yes. I'd say a certain amount of noise is a healthy sign. When children are shouting and squealing, they're usually playing, experimenting with their voices or testing how the world responds to them, and all of that feeds into language development and confidence. A child who's been trained to be permanently silent often turns out to be a child who's been trained not to ask questions either. That said, I draw a line at settings where it genuinely affects other people. A hospital ward or a long flight
is less about banning noise and more about teaching children to read the room.
Question 2, the negative one. Should children not be allowed to make noise under any circumstances? Never answer this with obey yes or no. Saying, no, that wouldn't be workable, means don't ban it. And replace the word never with, not here, not right now.
No, I don't think that would be workable or even desirable. A blanket ban like that would be almost impossible to enforce, and I think it would do more harm than good. You'd essentially be asking children to suppress a natural impulse, and that tends to come out somewhere else. What does make sense is teaching context and indoor voice at the dinner table and complete freedom in a playground. So rather than never, I'd say not here, not right now, which is a far easier lesson for a child to actually absorb.
Question 3. What kinds of noises are there in our life? Categorize. Don't list at random. Mechanical, social, domestic, natural, and finish on the distinction between sound and noise.
I suppose you could group them fairly neatly. There's mechanical noise, traffic, construction, aircraft, overhead, which is the sort we tend to complain about most. Then there's human or social noise, conversation, music, crowds, neighbours. There's domestic noise from appliances, which most of us have stopped noticing entirely. And then there are natural sounds, rain, birdsong, thunder, although I'd argue those don't really count as noise because noise is subjective. It's essentially any sound that arises when you didn't ask for it, which is why one person's music is another person's nuisance.
Question 4. Which is exposed to more noise, the city or the countryside? The city for density, traffic and construction, but the countryside isn't silent. Roosters, machinery, village loudspeakers. The real contrast is a constant drone versus sudden peaks.
Cities, without much doubt, if you're measuring average levels. You've got dense traffic construction that never seems to finish and simply far more people packed into a small space, so there's a constant background hum that never fully drops away. That said, I don't think the countryside is silent. It's more that the noise is intermittent rather than continuous. In rural Vietnam, you'll have roosters at 5 in the morning, agricultural machinery, and village loudspeakers broadcasting announcements. The difference is that a city gives you a steady drone, whereas the countryside gives you sudden peaks against a quiet backdrop, and those can actually feel more intrusive.
Question 5. How would people usually respond to noises in your country? High tolerance because noise reads as life and prosperity. Complaining can seem unneighborly, but it is shifting with karaoke complaints and tighter enforcement.
I'd say Vietnamese people are on the whole remarkably tolerant of noise, far more so than people in a lot of Western countries. Noise is often read as a sign of life and prosperity rather than a nuisance. A loud wedding or a busy street signals that things are going well. Complaining to a neighbour about music can come across as slightly unneighbourly. Having said that, I do think attitudes are shifting, particularly among younger people in the cities who work from home. Karaoke complaints have become a genuine public issue, and the authorities have started enforcing noise regulations far more seriously.
Question 6. How can people consider others' feelings when chatting in public? Read the acoustics of the space you're in. A lift, a quiet carriage, or a small cafe gives sound nowhere to go. And the content matters as much as the volume.
The simplest thing is just to be aware of the acoustics of wherever you happen to be. A conversation that's perfectly reasonable in an open square becomes intrusive in a lift, a quiet carriage, or a small cafe because there's nowhere for the sound to go. Taking phone calls outside, using headphones rather than a speaker, and dropping your voice when a room goes quiet are all fairly small adjustments. And I'd add that the content matters as much as the volume. Nobody wants to be trapped next to somebody's medical history. Ultimately, it comes down to remembering that a public space is shared, not just occupied.
Before we finish, the language. First, describing noise itself. Deafening or ear-splitting so loud it is physically uncomfortable. A din or a racket. Continuous, unpleasant, disorganized noise. A constant hum or a low drone, steady background noise you stop noticing. Noise pollution, harmful excess noise treated as an environmental problem. And background noise, sound you are simply not attending to. And now the verbs and phrases. To crank up the volume, to turn it up sharply, usually too far. To belt out a song, to sing very loudly, with more force than skill. To drown out, to be so loud that another sound cannot be heard. To make yourself heard, to get through the noise so that people understand you. Your ears are ringing, the after effect of prolonged loud noise. And to read the room, to sense what behavior a place calls for. Finally, how this is judged. 4 criteria, equally weighted. Fluency and coherence. The answer runs on without visible searching because the finish was planned before the start. Lexical resource precise, natural collocation, cranked up, belt out, tearing around. Grammatical range, perfect tenses, relative clauses and conditionals, used because they fit, not to show off. And pronunciation, which is stress, grouping and intonation. Judge that from human speech, not from this video. Our answers are read by a synthetic voice, so use them for content, structure and wording, and not as a pronunciation model. And once more, Band 9 here is our own quality target against the public band descriptors. It is not a certified examiner score. So, 4 things to keep. Plan with 4 boxes and a finish. 60 seconds, keywords only. Give the why bullet a third of your long turn. In part 3, state it, support it, stretch it. And answer negative questions in a full sentence. Never obey yes or no. Now your turn. Record your own 2-minute answer to this card today. 4 boxes, a finish, and no script. If this helped you, subscribe to BMaster79 and I'll see you in the next one.